This video is going to be my reaction to the Lions' 26-23 win over the Texans on Sunday Night Football. I'll be honest with you, this is a video that I didn't anticipate putting out, at least from a Lions winning the game standpoint. It took an unbelievable effort, focus, and commitment for them to go in there and get that win. I'm talking about from halftime onward. If you ever go back and watch football games, go back and watch this one. The entirety of the game is worth watching since we know the ending. In some ways, it reminds me, I don't know if you've ever done this, of like a great movie premiere that you're like, I like that so much, I want to go buy another ticket and watch it again. And you circle back and walk right back through the movie theater. It will be worth watching for you as a Lions fan to just enjoy the struggle and see how far you watched it live. And so you understand how well the Texans defense was playing in the first half, how dominant they were physically and athletically. Detroit still able to scratch and claw their way back into the game and get a win, primarily because of their defense. Scoring 19 unanswered points is an incredible achievement, but Aaron Glenn's defense was a rock, particularly in the second half. CD3 with 2 interceptions. He looks so much quicker than I thought he did in the first 2 or 3 weeks of the year. Feel free to let me know what you think of that. Brian Branch was all over the place in coverage. Aleem McNeil was disruptive. Looked like his right jaw was swollen, and he came back in the game pretty quickly. Anzalone, I think, has that clutch pass defense on the third down pass to, I believe it was to Mechie in the fourth quarter, leading to the long field goal that Fairbairn missed for the Texans. And Jake Bates. What's crazy about his game-winning field goal, but also both field goals, is the 58-yarder he makes to tie it with 3:20 left. That one snuck just inside the right upright, if I recall correctly. And then the game winner, that one snuck just inside. Somehow, inexplicably, it ends up sneaking inside the left upright. Really crazy from the angle that I saw, the replay that looked like it was behind the goalpost somehow. It almost looked like there was no chance that it slides through there, but it did. Sends Detroit back home to face the Jaguars next Sunday with a chance to improve to 9-1. This one was crazy. There's multiple words that could be used to describe it, I'm sure. Euphoric for Lions fans, frustrating in the first half, wild and crazy in the third quarter. It was almost the antithesis, if you remember, of the third quarter between the Seahawks and the Lions, where so many points were scored, I think 40. A little bit less than 40, actually. There was a touchdown scored early in the fourth quarter on a drive that began in the third in that game. This one was the opposite. Both quarterbacks kind of just imploded in the third quarter. Goff and Stroud, I think, making poor decisions and poor throws. You have to give credit to the Texans' defense. Whether you're able to do so or not, I understand as a Lions fan, you're just elated with the win, number one, celebrating the team that you have, the collection of players. But look, that Houston defense was badass in the first half. Totally dominated Detroit's offense that came in there averaging 32 points per game. Jalen Petre was everywhere. They only have him finishing with 6 tackles. I found myself thinking he was involved in twice as many. But if you don't know, in the first half, the Texans shut down Detroit's run game. 23 carries on 23 yards, on 13 carries to that point. Goff in the first half, the 3 interceptions, 1 on a Hail Mary, 7 of 17 passing. He did finish with 5 picks on the night, 2 from Texans rookie Kamari Lassiter. Goff only had 15 completions on 30 pass attempts, a far cry from his recent play, obviously. You couldn't find 3 games, in a row during this stretch where Goff's been so accurate, where he had 15 incompletions. He had 15 on tonight alone. To be able to get a win against that defense in that city on the road against Houston, they're so fast and aggressive, very well coached. I think they contest or challenge pretty much everything. Additional to that, to the point where you're down 23-7 at the half, Stroud is 14 of 20 passing with a late touchdown to put them up by 16 after 30 minutes. As poorly as Goff plays, throwing 2 more picks in the second half, how do you win? The defense was unbelievable. Stroud's decision-making was quite poor in the third quarter, for real, but CD3 was a big part of it. Of course, he has the interception on the first play of the third quarter. And the Lions actually were able to generate pressure tonight without, obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, Marcus Davenport, Derek Barnes, and then Zadarius Smith didn't play either. They finished with 4 sacks, 1 apiece by Aleem McNeil, Josh Peskel, Pat O'Connor, a backup defensive tackle hybrid, I think, and James Houston IV, who looked closer to himself at times tonight. Here's what the Lions defense did in the second half. They were just nasty. I mean, they contested everything. I do have one coverage play that I disagree with, the call that Aaron Glenn made, but it was effective, and so you can't criticize the overall results. Here's Houston's drives in the second half against Detroit's defense. 1 play interception. That's the pick by CD3 on a speed out by Tank Dell. That's a route that CD3 had allowed them to complete in the first half twice, and then he jumped it first play of the third quarter. Really cool moment, if you ask me. Just shows how savvy and smart he is. Second possession of the third quarter for Houston is 3 plays, 1 yard punt. That's after Goff's 4th interception. Then another interception by Stroud on the third possession. This was the one in the red zone, as CD3 passed off a route to Joseph underneath. So Joseph jumped basically an over concept. And they play kind of like the Patriots used to. CD3 ends up kind of moving it, floating to center field, and Stroud moves out to the right and just has nothing on the ball into the end zone. CD3 is able to pick it. That was, of course, after I think Detroit closed to 23-13 and went for 2 with like 26 minutes of gameplay left. I do have to digress here and ruin the party for a moment talking about that issue. You sure would like to have that point for the PAT or extra point in the fourth quarter at some point. I know there's a ton of people who are going to say this. You want to be down by 8. There's 11:34 left in the third quarter. By my math, 26 minutes and 34 seconds left in the game. There's a lot of game flow left out there. I get it, though. Anytime that the, quote, new analytics say that you should go for it to get down by 8, you should do so. But what happens when it doesn't work out? How do you justify it then? It's okay to evaluate and analyze the game here. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. I'm happy that the Lions won, for real. But that decision is a mistake with that amount of time left. I've seen the charts. I've had those charts in my hand before as a coach at the high school level. When to go for it, when not to. Those charts do not get consulted with above like 20 minutes left in the game, depending on score. There's too much possibility remaining for random things to happen. A fumble by the other team, a fumble by your team. And so when you give away a point, in my opinion, it comes back to haunt you more often than not, meaning you end up in a situation where you'd like to have it. Well, I know I'm getting off topic here away from Detroit's defense, but Bates' 58-yarder that I talked about with 3:20 left that tied it could have given you the lead. I get it. That's theoretical. We're not allowed to talk about theoretical there, but we are allowed to talk about the theoretical 2 points that were not scored in that moment. It is funny to me the analytics debate always ends up being a one-way conversation in terms of what's theoretical and what's not. I digress. After that decision and Stroud's interception, the next possession for Houston was 6 plays, 6 yards, another punt, and then 2 more 3-and-outs preceded the missed field goal where Stroud was, late in the fourth quarter, that is, where Stroud is clearly going to target whoever Arnold was guarding. I thought it was obvious at that point. We were talking about it in our Discord. A couple of us messaged back and forth like, hey, this is clearly going to be targeted to Arnold prior to that 3rd and 6. And it looks like almost Stroud kind of throws it right in the window where Anzalone is. Anzalone gets a hand on, I think, like his backside hand before Arnold does get there a little early. It's still a nice challenge by him. Whether it's called a defensive pass interference or not, I don't know. All I do know is the Texans' defense looked like world beaters in the first half and then somehow got outplayed by Detroit's defense in the second half that kind of has a band of misfits up there on the front defensive line. Not talking about Aleem McNeil or Onwuzurike or Reader, but the guys that are playing out on the edge were really in control, I thought, at times against the run. Well, throughout the entirety of the game against the run, and they put pressure on Stroud. Like I said, James Houston IV, he had a sack on the play picture you see right there. Nearly had a sack later on in the game in the third quarter when Interestingly, it looked like the Texans offensive lineman tried to strip CJ Stroud as he's being sacked. I've never seen that before. That was a clean win from James Houston IV against Tunsil, their left tackle. Is the play I think it was after Tunsil had gotten hurt and returned to the game, so maybe that was a factor. But him flashing, I believe he flashed in this game, was important. Muhammad, I thought, looked good a couple of plays. They got a sack from Pat O'Connor, more of an interior guy. All told in the second half, here's what the Lions defense did to Houston. Held them to 82 yards of offense on 31 plays. Less than 3 yards per snap after halftime. Branch was all over the place in coverage, physical. What do you say about CD3 at this point? That's a legendary performance in my opinion. You get a pick in the end zone. You get a pick to start the third quarter. Of course, Goff ruins it by being really greedy, I think. I think it's on the play action pass to Jameson Williams up top. I did a film study video on CD3 last week. I guess we're going to have to do another one. There's a lot of guys involved here. And one thing I want to mention, well, I'll just do this with Amik Robertson. I didn't think Amik Robertson played the first possession well at all. I thought he had two really poor coverage snaps, one in man and one in zone where he got too much depth. And then he kind of made the adjustment. He kind of fixed it. Competed and was involved a lot more, especially in man coverage. For Detroit to go down there against C.J. Stroud, a really high-level quarterback, get 4 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, do that without Zadarius Smith, I think is pretty revealing about what Aaron Glenn has built over there on the defensive side. Very well-called game overall from an organization standpoint and then situationally. I do have one coverage call I have to complain about. I believe this is after they've closed to 23-13. Could have been 23-14, like we talked about. They didn't go for 2, or they didn't kick the extra point. They went for 2, and it failed. That's another issue about it, is that you run the ball, and to that point, you hadn't been running the ball well. So, but in any case, I digress. 3rd and 8, Houston has the ball on their own 31-yard line. And they bring, I believe, both safeties in a blitz. Definitely one, but I thought it was 2. And Anzalone ends up man-to-man on Schultz. I think it actually was just one safety blitz. I don't get it. I just don't get it. Unless Branch was guarding someone else. I thought Branch was part of the blitz. Why not Branch on the tight end and then blitz Anzalone? It just doesn't make sense to me. I know you're trying to hide the look. You're trying to obscure the actual coverage. I get it. It's 3rd and 8. You just scored to make it 23-13. They're back on their own 31. Anzalone can't guard Schultz. He just can't. He can't guard him in man-to-man. Okay, if he runs an out over into the boundary, sure, Anzalone will either, worst case scenario, make the tackle after the catch, possibly force an incompletion. But in that situation, 3rd and 8, I thought it was a poor coverage call. But look, overall, what Aaron Glenn's guys were able to do was, I thought, the story of the game, whereas the Texans' defense was the story of the game in the first half. They were in complete control of the run game throughout. Joe Mixon he did have a 37-yard screenplay on the opening possession. He had an 8-yard touchdown on that drive to put the Texans up 7-0. But for the game, he finished with 46 yards rushing on 25 carries. Absolutely shut down. He was he's a selfish dude anyway, if you know anything about him, but he was so pissed off about it that he was angry on the sidelines. You saw it. The broadcast actually mentioned it and talked about it. Like it's a cool thing that you're winning 16-7 and your quarterback has to come over and get you on the same page with everybody else. A game that, oh, by the way, could put you at 7-3 if you're the Texans, and a win over one of the best teams in the NFL. Just utterly selfish. He did have two really nice pass pro reps, however, but for the night, Houston's offense produced 56 rushing yards. It's their lowest output since getting blown out by the Vikings 34-7 in Week 3. I thought Aaron Glenn's group played almost immaculate football at times in the second half. For the entirety of the 60 minutes, they held Houston at 248 yards total of offense, including 3.8 yards per play. The second half was somehow better. Their second half was somehow better than the Texans' first half. Texans finished with 16 first downs on the night. Stroud's 2 interceptions are clearly both important. But the one in the end zone is really tough for them to overcome because they could get points on that drive. Ends up being a huge factor or difference, I should say. This is a game-changing moment by CD3. He looks quicker, like I said, more decisive. He actually made 2 plays against the run as well, out on the edge. One of them I think he got hurt on in the third quarter after his second interception. Switching over to the offensive side a little bit, Laporta and Gibbs made big plays when they got opportunities. And then Jamison Williams, that dude showed up. Yeah, he only had 3 catches for 53 yards, but one of them, actually they were all 3 important. One of them was a 3rd and 16 conversion late in the first quarter. Detroit at the time is trailing 10-0. And that one keeps the drive alive. I think it goes for 23. He also beats Kamari Lassiter on a 3rd and 6 for 13 yards on the same possession, where Goff caps it with the 20-yard touchdown to Laporta. I think his catch on the second down in the second half is even more critical. It's in the fourth quarter, about 13 minutes left. I think a little less than 13 minutes left. It's a play-action concept on a 2nd and 6. And Goff finds Jamison Williams on the left hash. The ball's kind of wobbly. I think Goff's arm gets hit. Skipper had trouble over there. There's no reason to talk about Skipper too much. I mean, he's outmanned against Danielle Hunter. That's just a fact. He's going to lose that battle the majority of the time. And Danielle Hunter certainly gave him problems, particularly early. There did seem to be an adjustment. They tried to chip him a little bit more later. But on this play that I'm talking about, 2nd and 6, I think it's about 12:40 left as the ball snapped. Goff's trying to get the ball to Jamison Williams, and he's hit. Jamison Williams takes a huge shot from behind by a safety, and I think it's a DB hits him low at the same time. And then after the play, he held on, of course. After the play, it looked like medical staff was trying to talk to him on the sidelines, and he didn't want anything to do with it. It looked like I even thought I saw him mouth the words, "I'm fine," and turn to look back into the game. He showed up, and then St. Brown makes the I would say St. Brown makes the most important play of all of them, but there's really half a dozen crucial plays made by 5 or 6 guys. I think St. Brown finished 6 of 8 in terms of catches to targets. Of course, his streak does come to an end. We kind of expected that just because of the quality of defense that you're facing in Houston. But his catch on a 3rd down, huge, to get the ball into field goal range. At that point, seemed like Dan Campbell was like, all right, we'll take a 50-yard field goal and we'll just get out of here. I thought maybe they were going to run another play on that 3rd and 7, but maybe he was trying to not risk a hold. They're already in, quote, field goal range, 52-yarder. Bates is able to sneak it inside the left upright like we talked about earlier. One thing I want to mention with Detroit's roster that I think makes it unique. And this kind of goes along with my point about a half a dozen crucial or critical plays that you may not win this game without. Those plays are made by 5 or 6 different guys. And that's the thing about this Lions team that, as I observe it right now, trying to be neutral as much as I can at this point, some rosters are in all professional sports, but the NFL, some are top-heavy, almost star-powered like an NBA team, perhaps. Some are balanced, very young. I think that's the Texans in a lot of ways. They do have some free agent signings that kind of err on the other side in terms of veterans like Danico Autry. This Lions team has both. A lot of young talent, a lot of depth that's built up. Guys who can come in and step in and play, Skipper being one of them. And they have star power at the top. I think that dynamic allows your team to dig in when you're down like they were and fight back, because across the board, across the entirety of the roster, you can win matchups on individual plays. It's also obviously a credit to Dan Campbell and his staff for fighting through it, because they were in trouble. They were in absolute trouble. I'm going to read you some of my notes. I'm going to be as honest as possible. And the guys that are in my Lions Discord or Ravens Discord know what my thoughts were at halftime. I thought the game was over. I did. I said, if Ben Johnson and those guys can figure this one out and figure out a way to get a win against this defense, playing this well at home, then he's the man. Here's some of my notes from the first half. Lions are fortunate at one point to only be down 16-7. They have been able to hold the Texans to a couple of field goals at that point. And the 2 interceptions had essentially handed the Texans short field twice, either inside the red zone or close to it. It could have been ugly, in my opinion. Jamison Williams early on was the only guy getting open consistently, and then Laporta popped the touchdown on the play action. The Lions offense through 5 possessions I thought was getting dominated. O-line couldn't pass pro at all. Now I'm talking about in the known passing situations. They could not pass pro. Run game totally shut down up to the first half. 23 yards on 13 carries, like I talked about. I even put in my notes that this one looks over unless something changes the dynamic. Of course, Dan Campbell gets out there. Well, they aired his interview at the time that CD3 is making the pick. I'm quite sure that at that moment, Dan Campbell's actually on the sideline coaching his team. The touchdown to Mechie late in the second quarter, or Michi late in the second quarter, making it 23-7, I thought was a poor play by Terrion Arnold. And to me, they looked a little slower in the first half. Something switched with the defense in the second half that they really matched or exceeded the Texans' level of play. I know that everyone talked about Stroud's play at the half, 14 of 20, I think 169 yards, 1 touchdown. But I thought that the story was the Texans' defense. If you can't pass pro someone and you can't run block them, what the heck can you get accomplished? They had one drive to get to within 10-7. But on that drive, I'm talking about Detroit, on that drive, they had to convert 3 third downs in order to get that done. That was the 3rd and 16 to Jameson Williams I talked about. The 3rd and 6 to Jameson Williams, where I think he beats Kamari Lassiter. And then the 3rd and 1 scramble by Goff. Everything was labored, challenged, and contested by a Texans defense. These are my notes. By a Texans defense that looks way faster and way more athletic. There was simultaneously no running lanes for Gibbs and Montgomery. Texans are everywhere, whether it's man or zone. Pitre was spectacular and disruptive. Pretty much everything they asked him to do. On the other side, the Texans only generated 11 first downs and averaged 4.3 yards per play, but are still up 23-7 because of 3 interceptions by Goff. One of them was a Hail Mary that Collinsworth says shouldn't count. Like, why the hell would an interception not count? You threw the football and the other team caught it. But in any case, the defense holding twice in the red zone ended up being important. They did give up the late touchdown. Arnold letting Mechie beat him on an out-and-in route. Texans had 4 yards rushing at halftime. And Detroit's defense turned into something. Is this the best defensive game they played this year? It's the best defensive half. I think that's pretty obvious. And it's stacked on top of a first half where they held Houston to 4 yards rushing. Nothing accomplished by their offense at all in the first half. And close to, in my opinion, getting blown out of there if it weren't for the 2 interceptions in the third quarter. If you don't get turnovers on those 2 possessions, who knows what happens with Goff playing the way he did. I don't know, what the problem was on a couple of the interceptions. Laporta, I think, kind of gets knocked off his route by Lassiter down near the end zone. I think Goff put that ball pretty much where he should. When we get the end zone angle or the all-22, I guess we'll be able to tell. This was a pretty amazing win for me to observe. You have to let me know as a Lions fan where it stands for you. Recent times, I know where it stands. It's amazing to get a win. Probably close to being on par with the Rams wildcard playoff win and or the win in the divisional round against the Bucks just because of the situation. This is not in the playoffs, so that's why I would say close to being on par. It's certainly a little bit below it. 8-1 now. 3 great road wins. What other team in the NFL has these road wins? At Minnesota, at Green Bay, at Houston, and I believe that all occurred in the span of 4 weeks. All 3 of those teams, Detroit leaves town, and all 3 of those teams have to figure out how to move on after losing to them at home. Texans had a 9-day break to get ready for this one, and Detroit still is able to come back. That says a lot about the character of the team, the leadership, how focused they are, and how much they believe in themselves. You should too, obviously, and I know you do now as a Lions fan if you didn't know already. Great opportunity to go into Thanksgiving at 10-1, I think, if I did my math right. And look, the Colts are a tough team. They upset the Ravens last year in Baltimore in week 3, so you can't sleep on anybody, not even Jacksonville next week for that matter. Whoever a team is that's going to either come in Detroit and get a win or at home hold them off, you're going to have to play 60 minutes to get it done. The Texans found that out tonight. And the other 2 AFC South teams are going to get their shot in the next couple of weeks. Fun, long game for me to watch. Frustrating, extremely frustrating at the halftime because I want the Lions to win, just like I want the Ravens to. And then to sit and watch the defense turn into something greater than they've been the entirety of the season. They played very well at times against the Tampa Bay Bucks. Got shredded against the Seahawks, don't get me wrong. Had moments where they got stops in some other games, teams like the Titans and whatnot. This is a good football team with a really good quarterback. and I think a really good coaching staff, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. And the Lions defense was able to dismantle them and basically dissuade them from even trying to run the football at all in the second half, and still able to stop the pass for the most part. Man, I appreciate you guys' time. Let me know where you think this win ranks for you in recent years. This Dan Campbell run, I guess, it's got to be up there pretty high, in my opinion. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy my thoughts and some of the things that I had to talk about, the things I pointed out that I noticed during this game, this come from behind win, 19 unanswered points, moving to 8-1, heading back to Detroit next week to face a Jacksonville team from the AFC South that played the Texans tough, but doesn't match up to their physicality, nor their speed or quality of defense at all. If you think other Lions fans would enjoy hearing my thoughts on all that, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.